Welcome to the Country Watch Political Intelligence Briefing Quick Hits, a weekly briefing of hot stories across the world in brief. I'm Denise Youngblood-Coleman, the Chief Editorial Officer and Senior International Affairs Analyst at Country Watch. This week, North Korea is the featured country. January 2022 has been one of the busiest months for North Korea in terms of its missile technology, with a flurry of several short-range cruise and ballistic missiles, as well as hypersonic missiles. At the end of January 2022, North Korea carried out its 7th missile launch, and it was the biggest missile launch since 2017. The missile at issue was believed to be the intermediate-range Hwasong-12. The missile ascended to a maximum altitude of 1,240 miles or 2,000 kilometers, flew for about 30 minutes to a distance of 500 miles or 800 kilometers, and then landed in the Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea. Clearly, this missile launch was in direct violation of prevailing United Nations Security Council resolutions that prohibit North Korea from carrying out ballistic and nuclear weapons tests. Despite the imposition of harsh sanctions, North Korea has violated those United Nations prohibitions with impunity. There was a short period of what one might call self-imposed détente in 2018 when Kim Jong-un announced a moratorium on testing long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, and nuclear weapons. This was the period in which Kim was participating in direct talks with the Trump administration. Once those talks stalled by 2019, Kim declared that the moratorium was over and the testing and launch regime resumed. North Korea has continued to carry out ballistic missile and nuclear weapons tests over the years with impunity for several reasons. At the practical level, Pyongyang was expanding its missile technologies. The more tests conducted, the more engineering test history is accumulated to gauge the success of its missile systems program. At the domestic political level, these tests bolster national pride and shore up support for the leadership of Kim Jong-un. At the regional level, with an election coming up in South Korea in March 2022, North Korea was keen to place pressure on Seoul and any incoming president. At the international level, North Korea was using the flurry of missile tests and launches as a means to pressure the United States into nuclear negotiations that have been stalled since the time of the former Trump administration. The missile tests in January 2022 served to demonstrate Pyongyang's rapidly accelerated capability to strike targets. While in the past the most significant concern was with regard to North Korea using shorter-range missiles to hit targets in East Asia, such as South Korea and Japan, these anxieties have widened. Now, North Korea was showcasing its capability with medium and longer-range missiles, with the possibility of not just striking targets in the Pacific, but the mainland United States. According to the CSIS Missile Defense Project, the estimated upper ranges of North Korean missiles include the Nodong at 1,500 kilometers, the Pukgongsong 2 and 3 approximately 2,000 kilometers, the Musudan 4,000 kilometers, the Hwasong-12 at 4,500 kilometers, the Hwasong-14 at 10,400 kilometers, and the Hwasong-15 at 13,000 kilometers. Now on to another hotspot, this time in Europe, where Russian forces have been building up their forces on the border with Ukraine, with the possibility of an invasion looming. Ukrainian military experts have said that Russia needed another 2 to 3 weeks to deploy all the forces needed to launch a large-scale military operation. Their assessment was that even in such a case, there would not be enough Russian forces to hold significant territory. The Ukrainian military experts forecast that it was more likely that Russia would press forward with smaller military incursions into breakaway territories in eastern Ukraine. They also indicated that the conflict in the Sea of Azov would likely intensify. As well, there could be rocket attacks on military targets and critical infrastructure. Other stories I'm covering include Honduras, where left-wing Xiomara Castro was inaugurated into power as president. The presidential election in Honduras offered a clear choice between the hard right and the left wing of the country's political landscape. Castro was the wife of former leftist president Manuel Zelaya, who was ousted from office in 2009 in a de facto coup. Ultimately, Castro won a landslide victory, bringing a decisive end to the 12-year domination by the right-wing National Party. Castro was sworn into power as the first female president of Honduras. Her inauguration represented vindication for the leftist political wing of the country, and particularly for her husband, former deposed President Zelaya. In Italy, President Sergio Mattarella was re-elected to a second term in office. In Italy, the head of state is elected by a joint session of deputies, senators, and regional representatives. In Italy, the presidency is a largely ceremonial post. However, the head of state can also function as a stabilizing force in a fractious political environment. This election was one that could only be regarded as a fractious political environment, with Parliament unable to reach concurrence on a replacement for Mattarella, who had intended to go into retirement. After 6 unsuccessful rounds of voting over a course of 6 days, Italian officials called on Mattarella to retain his position. He agreed to stay on because of his sense of responsibility at a time when Italy was continuing to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Mario Draghi, who has governed Italy at the helm of a coalition made up of parties from the centre-left, centre-right, and the populist Five Star movement, thanked Mattarella for his decision. Another story I'm covering concerns the snap elections just held in Portugal. At stake was the composition of the Assembleia da República, or Assembly of Republic, with 230 seats. The leader of the party with the most seats in Parliament and control over an outright majority of seats typically serves as Prime Minister and forms the government. The last elections were held in 2019 and won by Prime Minister Antonio Costa of the Socialist Party. His socialist government has been reliant upon the left bloc and the far left, communists, for support in Parliament. In 2022, Portugal was returning to the polls early in snap elections because of a failure to pass a budget. Losing a budget vote in Parliament is effectively losing a confidence vote and thus triggers a snap election. Moreover, Prime Minister Costa emphasized that Portugal needed stability in order to lead the country out of the pandemic and deal with economic recovery. Pre-election polling indicated that the socialists were eroding support. Also influencing the possible outcome of the election was the growing support for the far-right Chega party, whose leader, André Ventura, railed against corruption, demeaned the country's Roma minority, and urged chemical castration for sex offenders. But on election day, after the Portuguese people went to the polls and cast their ballots, it was clear that Costa and his Socialist Party had defied the odds. In fact, Costa and the Socialists captured an overall outright majority in Parliament, easily increasing their representation in the Assembleia da República. The main opposition centre-right Socialist Democrats took the next most seats, with the far-right Chega party becoming the third largest in Parliament with 12 seats. In his victory speech, Prime Minister Costa said an absolute majority does not mean absolute power. It doesn't mean governing alone. It is an increased responsibility. I'll end this briefing with what one might view as a contrasting political orientation in the United States. During a rally in Conroe, Texas, former President Donald Trump promised pardons for the insurrectionists who participated in the Delhi January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol should he contest and win the 2024 presidential race. To date, more than 700 people have been arrested and charged with federal crimes in connection with a violent insurrectionist attack on the seat of legislative power. The record, both visual and in terms of supporting documents, was clear. January 6, 2021 represented an outrageous attempt by the insurrectionists to stop the peaceful transfer of power and deny the rightful winner of the 2020 election, Joe Biden, the presidency. It should be noted that under 18 U.S. Code, the penalty for insurrection is described as follows, quote, "Whoever incites, sets foot on, assists or engaged in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States," unquote. An offer of pardons by a future President Trump could only be understood as the erasure of the seriousness of the crimes committed by the insurrectionists who carried out the worst assault on American democracy since the War of 1812. Subscribers can read more about these and other stories at the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. I would also like to take this time to mention my comprehensive Afghanistan withdrawal report called Sunset in the Graveyard of Empires, which will be available for purchase from the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. Thank you for your time. Have a great day, and remember now, more than ever, we live in an interconnected world.